Lamed Gimel, Posuk Gimel, Lamed Gimel Gimel. This is after he divides the camp, and he's about to confront Esav. He passed before his families. He bowed 7 times to the ground, meaning full prostration, 7 times, until he approached his brother. Okay, so over here I just mentioned yesterday the Balaturim. Why does the Torah tell us he bowed 7 times? So he cites the pasuk initially, Al Shem Ki Sheva Yipol Tzadik V'Kom. Because Yaakov understood that if the tzaddik falls before the Rasha 7 times, V'Kom, afterwards he rises. So subordinating himself, full prostration, before Esav 7 times, that's Yipol Tzadik V'Kom. Then he rises. But it's interesting. What's considered Yipol Tzadik? A Yipol Tzadik is only, let's say it's a person's a tzaddik and has wealth, and he loses his wealth. Is that called Yipol Tzadik? Has he fallen? That's the called fallen. Fallen's only, you've been subordinated in a disgraceful state. A tzaddik to be subordinated before a Rasha, that's considered Yipol. When the Rasha has the upper hand over the tzaddik, that's called Yipol. He's fallen. So Yaakov going through the motions of prostration 7 times before Esav, that's Yipol Tzadik, Sheva Pom Yipol Tzadik, and then he rises afterwards. Okay? Vayoretz Esav the Kroso, V'Yechapkeyu. Esav runs towards Yaakov, V'Yechapkeyu, and he embraces him. Vayibol at Savorov, he falls on his neck. Vayishokeyu, and he kisses him. Vayivko, and they both cry. Okay? So if you take a look, the word Vayishokeyu, there's a dot on every one of the letters, right? What is the significance of the dots on the word Vayishokeyu? So if you look in Rashi, Vayishokeyu Nokud Olov. On the words Vayishokeyu, there are dots on top of it. There's an argument, what exactly are these dots alluding to? What's the significance of these dots? The first interpretation is, although he kissed him and he cried, it was not with his full heart. Okay? So Reb Shimon Yochai goes to explain. Halochi. It's haloch. What does halocha mean? It's fact. It's irrefutable fact. Like we say, haloch mishmisinai. Halochi biyodua. It is known. Sheishav soni liYaakov. Esav hates Yaakov. So if that's the case, why did he cry? He was touched at that moment, and he kissed him with his full heart. That's what the Torah is coming to with these dots. Factually, Esav's halochi. Rosh Hashanah is speaking pretty strongly. Halochi is like halachim shemisinai. It's fact. It's irrefutable fact. Biyodua, it's known. Sheishav Soli Yaakov. So how is it possible that he kissed him? The answer is, at that moment, Nichmu Rachmav. He was touched at that moment. That's why he kissed him with his whole heart. So therefore, if you see an Edomite who actually displays a certain warmth or positive feeling, it's for the moment. It's no more than the moment. Why? Because halochi Esav Soni liYaakov. That's what the Torah is telling us. So I asked the question. The question I asked was, we know that every letter in the Torah, when it's written, it's for a specific purpose. So if the Torah puts dots on every one of these letters of Yishokeyu, that means it's important for us to know this fact. That what? Halochi Esav Soni liYaakov. Biyodua, it is known that Esav Soni liYaakov. The Torah is telling us, don't forget for a moment here that although based on your relationships and your experience of life and your perception, you're convinced that it's not the case, the Torah is saying, Don't delude yourself. It's halachihi. You could bring all the proofs in the world. I'll give you an example. We learned, studied in Shabbos, tefillin have to be square. They have to be black. How do you know they have to be square and black? It doesn't say that in the Torah. It says, but exactly the shape, there's no even allusion to the shape and the color. So how do we know it has to be square and black? So Gemara says, halachim should be Sinai. It was ordained to Moshe at Sinai. This is the way tefillin are supposed to, the shape and the color of the tefillin. They have to be black. But how do you know? The answer is because it was ordained to Sinai, and to Moshe at Sinai, that's the way it has to be. Reb Shimi Yochai says, halachihi. This is fact, irrefutable fact. Biyodua. Esav son of Yaakov. So the Torah writes those dots to communicate to us, never to forget that. As much as you want to bring proofs, endless proofs, it doesn't change the fact. That's how important this fact is. Esav son of Yaakov. Now, very interesting. This exact language you find when Yosef revealed himself to his brothers, correct? It says Yosef and Binyamin, they embraced, and it says the exact same words, Vayipol at Savorov, Vayefk. He fell on his neck and he cried. Tzavorov. So over there, Rashi says, what did they cry about, Yosef and Binyamin? We know that the Mishkan Shiloh was Bechelko Shel Yosef. The Mishkan of Shiloh was in the portion of Yosef, and the two Bati Migdosh was Bechelko Shel Binyamin, right? The Aron was in the portion of Binyamin. So when they cried, when they embraced by Yosef and Binyamin, they cried over the Churban Abayis, the destruction of Mishkan Shiloh and the destruction of both Bati Migdosh. That's what they cried by Yosef and Binyamin. It says the same thing. Vayibul Atzavorov, Vayivku. You would think maybe the crying, somehow they're both crying over the Churban in the future. Even Esav's crying over this. Torah says, but here it says one word before the word Vayivku. It says Vayushakeyu. Vayushakeyu with the dot says, no, Esav son of Yaakov. This crying is not over the Churban Abayis. Just to the contrary. Esav is the one who destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. Right? The second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed by the Romans. That was what? That's Esav. But other than the word Vayushakeyu, it's the same words when Yosef and Binyamin met. Vayipol al tzavora vayevk. The word, it's not preceded with the word Vayushakeyu, and on the word Vayushakeyu you have the dots. To indicate this, don't confuse the two. Okay? That's number one thing. Secondly, if you take a look in the Balaturim here, Vayushakeyu, what is the significance of the dots? Shekiven lenoshcho. He intended, when he kissed him, he intended to bite him. Esav wanted to bite Yaakov. Why? How do we know this? It's the Medrash, but Vayishakeyu, the gematria ulenoshcheyu bo. The gematria of Yishakeyu, he came to bite him. Now the word shinov, Alan, shinov, you could say that to Seder. Shinov, what is the gematria of shinov? The gematria Esav. Shinov, his teeth, and Esav are the same numerical value. Right? We say in the Seder, Hake is Shinov. Right? Blunt his teeth. What's Shinov? The Russia. You have the Chocham, Russia, Roshim HaOmer.
And you break his teeth.
You blunt his teeth. What is teeth? What did the teeth represent? That's Esav. Shinov is Esav. Okay? Now, I think this is the punchline right now, what I'm going to tell you. The Gemara tells us in Psachim, we know Rabbi Akiva, initially, he was classified as an Amoritz. Only due to watching the water dripping on the rock when he was a shepherd, he realized that he has a chance to change. But Rabbi Akiva tests himself, it's Gemara Psachim, that he says, before I changed, when I was an Amoritz, my level of hate for Talmidei Chacham was, I would bite them k'neshichas chamor. The way a donkey bites, that's the way I would have bitten them. That was the intensity of my hate for Talmidei Chachamim. So the Gemara says, what is k'neshichas chamor? What's the difference? A donkey's bite and any other animal that bites. So the Gemara says that when a donkey bites, it bites. Not only is it a flesh wound, it bites through the bone. With one bite, it breaks right through the bone. That's an indication of the animosity that he had towards Talmid Chachomim. It's the most extreme expression of hate, that the bite is Kedushichas Chamor. Okay? He wanted to bite him. What does the bite represent? It's the bite, it represents this level of intense hate. That's the biting. Shinov is what? You could only bite if you have teeth. That's Esav. Now, what I was thinking, as we know, that the word chamor, what is the root of the word chamor? Chamor is chomer, material, right? Material. What is the struggle between Yaakov and Esav? The material versus the spiritual. What is the primary value of existence? Esav is olam hazeh. Yaakov is olam haba. The material, the chomer is only to facilitate the spiritual. Esav was what? Was chomer. The chamor, the bite of the chamor is the most vicious bite. He wanted to bite him. Because what did Esav represent? He represented the chomer. The chomer was the material. Therefore, the gematria of Shinov is what? Is Shinov. That's the gematria, right? Shinov is Esav. The Gemara says in Psachim, in Chulin, we had a Gemara Chulin, that, which we studied, that it says that if a person's bitten by a donkey, a person will never recover from that. Seems to be he would die. Gemara says we've seen people, they don't die. It says that wound will never heal. The wound is such a vicious wound, it will never heal. Now it says when Yaakov fought with the angel, it says Vayiga bekaf yurecho. He injured him, he dislocated his hip. What does it say in Chazal before? That injury, Rashi cited the Chazal until the end of time. That's Dorosh Shmad. That in the future we're always vulnerable. That wound always is permanent. We're always vulnerable to the domination of Esav, the generation which they will torture us. They will persecute us, like the Aser Rugi Malchus. That's what it is. So that's the bite is the most vicious. You never could recover from that. Yaakov's wound will never be fully healed because he says he touched all the generations of the tzaddikim till the end of time. That will only be corrected with coming of Mashiach. When the Har Esav will be judged, that's when we're going to have a full recovery from that. But until then, we always have that remnant of that wound that Esav, that the Malach, which was the archangel of Esav, had wounded Yaakov. That's the significance of the letters, of the dots on the word V'chapkeu. You know, we could think, it looks like Binyamin and Yosef coming together, embracing, crying on the neck. Before the Vayivku, it says Vayishakeu. The dots, and Torah goes out of his way never to forget this. Never delude yourself. Okay?